We got a weekly developer update that was released yesterday on the Suicide Squad Twitter page. We're going to go over this, the highlights anyway, and talk about it. Now, we did just have the first big update recently, and I'm sure a lot of people were upset that certain things weren't addressed. Well, in this blog post, they do address some of those things, along with some other things that should be coming to Suicide Squad, hopefully pretty soon. So let's get into it. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about it? Are you happy, I guess, with maybe a little bit of transparency that they are trying to at least provide with some of the players? And are you happy with direction that you think that it could be going? But either way, start off with an intro, which yada, yada, yada. You know, we won't read the entire thing. If you're interested in reading this whole blog post, like I said, it was on the Suicide Squad Twitter page, but top priority issues. Now, I think a lot of these issues were ones that we kind of expected to be addressed in the first big patch, but it wasn't. For our upcoming patches, we are looking to address login issues and server issues, which I know a lot of people are experiencing. And while we might not be able to fix all those issues right away, I want to assure everyone this is a top priority for us. We hear and feel your frustration, and we can only agree it's unacceptable for the players who are affected by this. We need to do better, and we're working hard to fix these issues. It is, however, not an easy nut to crack because it's not one single issue. It's several smaller issues that are affecting some players in different ways. We can only ask that we remain patient and keep giving more information through customer support and helping us address this issue. Now, we have streamed this game, quite a few times since it's been released. And there's lots of people that come into the stream and say, I still can't log on. They bought and pre-ordered the game and still can't log on. Now, we personally have never had a single login issue, of course, except for the very beginning initial pre-order launch. Besides for that, we haven't had any problems with this, but I know there are still tons of players that experience these problems. Why did we release an Endgame bug fix and a balancing patch first? This is a huge question that I'm sure a lot of people were wondering once that big patch came through, and why didn't they address some of these things? So they did address this. Right now, balancing changes can be done by our design team with little or no need for code support. Login issues and server issues are sadly not something a designer can fix. However, we don't want to delay the changes that can be implemented quickly and will improve parts of the game. So while we understand that you might wonder and be frustrated around priorities, keep in mind that we have different teams working on different issues in parallel. Rest assured, our engineering and network code teams are dedicated and completely focused on fixing the network issues. At the end of the day, we don't want to delay changes that we can make and believe will improve parts of the game. I think most people probably assume that different teams work on different things. I don't necessarily think that that was an issue. I think the main issue was, what is specifically the problem? Why is it that people still, after weeks of being, of the game being released, why is it that people still can't log on? Why is it that people are still having problems with the servers? What is it that is going on that is causing so much trouble and so much time? It's been quite a long time, and so we kind of expected things to be fixed at that point, and with them still not being fixed, kind of be nice to know what exactly the problem is. So hopefully we do see that patch coming very soon. Next thing, a patch and leaderboard update. I'm not going to read this whole thing. This is the things that they did fix in the game. The burn affliction, it was broken. It helped people complete level 200 pretty easily. I mean, we did make a video where we ourselves got carried solo by somebody who was using this burn affliction. That's how overpowered this affliction was and the bug in it. And so they did some resetting on it. They did some changes to the burn affliction to make it, stack normally. They changed the mastery level at 46 plus with the health of the enemies. They did that sort of stuff. They also made the enemy damage stronger, which certainly makes it a lot harder getting one shot like crazy. You do anything past 46, 50, 60, 70, you can get one absolutely demolished by some of these snipers. And still doing level 200. I don't even know how it's going to even be possible right now with the gear and the damage numbers that we get, because it doesn't feel like it's balanced at all on the opposite side now, right? It does. I mean, before the burn affliction was destroying and demolishing people, and now the enemies are absolutely destroying and demolishing us with the gear that we have. The damage, the weapons do not do enough damage. A lot of the synergies with the other afflictions, specifically with Deep Freeze and Live Wire, there's basically no weapons, no gear, no anything that is built around these sort of afflictions, which makes it a lot harder for you to really come up with strong builds in those afflictions. So it kind of like did almost the reverse effect. So what's next? Highest priority code teams at the moment is the first and foremost address the issues that some of the players around login and servers. So that's definitely important. And especially before season 1 even drops, before the Joker is even released. I mean, I know that's still weeks from now, but obviously all of these things for sure have to be ironed out. Same with matchmaking. Certainly things that have to be ironed out before we get to that point. Changes in the Promethean game loop. Now, in order to do these high-level incursions, you have to have the game currency Prometheum. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get it. Sometimes it's a little bit easier, just depending on how high you can go in your incursions and depending on what you do in the city. And so they felt, and hear the community by saying, well, it's boring, to try to do this loop to get this Prometheum around the city. Well, their idea is that raising hell is going to be the main way to get this. And so they're going to reward 3,000 Prometheum for getting tier 1 complete, which is pretty decent. I mean, that's 3 runs in some of the incursions. But either way, they say that, this is going to be a thing they want you to do. They're also planning to giving hit squads a bump so that they'll drop better loot, which will be, kind of nice. Now moving on to Mutator Balancing, Boom and Affliction Immunity. I think this is a huge thing. We definitely have experienced this in every single stream we've been on with the Boom and Affliction. It prevents you from doing certain builds, and they talk about how they want you to have build diversity, but every single one of these incursions have this Boom and Affliction immunity on there, which prevents you from making certain builds. And so that's a little bit frustrating. And so we've noticed the feedback from a lot of players that certain mutators are frustrating to play with and limit the options available for you in combat. Culprits, Boom, and Affliction immunity. Now, basically what those are is Boom is when the enemies explode when they die. So basically any character that you want up in their face with close range, 5 meters or closer with shotguns or something like that, or melees and things, they explode and cause you to get damage, which makes it really hard at high levels. Same with Affliction immunity. It requires you to get a crit on a enemy before you can afflict them with a affliction. And so it makes it really frustrating on trying to do things like Live Wire and Deep Freeze when you have to crit a whole bunch of enemies before you even afflict them with Deep Freeze. And so, yeah, that's definitely a big hindrance and a big deterrent to do some sort of afflictions. Now, the biggest problem to this, at least to me, they say, I first wanted to talk a little bit about the role of mutators in Endgame overall. Before I address these specific ones, mutators are supposed to act as a playstyle changer. Points in the mastery levels where you need to reevaluate your build, which is why they're mostly made to synergize with certain builds or afflictions. Now, that idea is fine, and I'm all for that, but the fact that every single one of the missions are exactly the same with the exact same mutators doesn't really offer the play style changes, right? The only thing you're doing is building for these incursion missions. The only thing you're not building to run around the city. You're not building, your character and your gear and your afflictions and all that stuff to run around in the city. That's stupid. You're building to for Endgame. And the fact that every single Endgame is exactly the same, it limits everything that you do to a specific thing. Like, why are you going to build to run around in the city when you can't complete the Endgame with it? I think they need to change the incursions. If they want this to be true, they need to change the incursions. One of them have boom. One of them have affliction immunity. One of them have something else. And that would require you to think about what build you wanted to do with what specific mission and what specific incursion. And so I think with this, it's a little bit frustrating, and I hope they do make the correct changes in it, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. They do say that they are considering excluding Suicide Strike and Shield harvesting from triggering boom. I think that would be a step in the right direction. But like I said, I think the biggest thing I think they should do is change and not put all of them in every single one of them. Don't have boom on every single mission. Make it different, so we have to use a different build. But either way, they also say that they're also considering modifying affliction immunity so that it will be removed from enemies whenever they take damage rather than just on critical hits. Again, I think that a step in the right direction, but I think they should just change it and not make them all on every single incursion. And then finally, we got lower tiered legendary items. And while I have seen quite a few of these legendary tiered items that are pretty strong. I mean, we've made a couple builds with some of these legendary ones, and some of the legendary ones do have pretty good, perks on them and stuff like that. It is definitely being run by Bane's Infamy and the Venom Frenzy, and then the Fire builds with all of the other type of gear. The legendaries, some of them are nice, but even when you put on other items, it's still geared towards Venom Frenzy and still geared towards the burn. And so it'll be interesting. I think they need to certainly bump up the damage values of certainly all weapons, but specifically legendary for one. And then even some of the perks, because some of the perks are absolutely terrible and you would never use them in a million years on some of these legendaries. But like I said, some of them are powerful and could possibly get some mileage at higher mastery levels, which is what they say. However, we're also thinking there's room for lesser used legendary items to find a home with experimentation. While I kind of agree with that, it's still very, very limited because there's so much Venom Frenzy, so much Bane. And the fact that take the other, items in the game, like the Hack set, the Poison Ivy set, the Lex set, all of these sets require one single item, which is the transversal mod. And so all of these sets that require the transversal mod, you could then only put one of those sets on your character at one time. And I think that is terrible. That is an absolute terrible design to put all of your eggs in one basket, which is all pretty much in the traversal mod, which makes it very limiting to make these unique builds with these other legendary items. But carefully taking a look at this. But before we action anything, we would love to hear from you if you've discovered a legendary item you think would be great in a build, but not using, falling behind in terms of damage output, or due to situational or too hard to trigger or maintain, because some of them are super hard to trigger and maintain. Now, there was one specific item, for example, that we were using yesterday in the Deep Freeze King Shark build that we were doing, and it was a legendary shotgun that said that if you killed an enemy with an affliction, it would spread that affliction to other enemies around within 10 meters. And we tried this a lot, and it did not work. And that is, those sort of things are really frustrating, because in these incursion missions around, again, the enemies that were around them, since so many of them spawn in at one particular time, you have to trigger crits on all the enemies, right, before they get that affliction. And so if you're using this shotgun, while in theory it looks amazing to have Deep Freeze on there for 15 or 20 seconds, and then you use your shotgun, you run in very close range or somewhat close range, spread that affliction to all the enemies that are rushing in at one time. It just does not trigger, and it does not work because you can't get the crits on the other enemies before you spread the affliction. It's just ridiculous. And some of the times, with these items, how they trigger and how they work just aren't applicable in the game. We probably went on a lot longer than we probably needed to, but that is the weekly developer update, although it feels like this is the first weekly developer update I've seen. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this stuff. Go over to Twitch, follow over there. Same with YouTube, like, subscribe, and all that stuff if you're new. I will see y'all next time, y'all. Yeah, take it easy. Have a great weekend. We're out. Peace.